same credentials as Meredith. We've been working together for a while. My company is called No Worries Dog Training, and again, working with dogs in rescue world, and you guys all being fosters for rescues, it's such a necessary part of the puzzle that is our current situation with dogs. We have so many dogs, and having folks like you guys who are willing to open up your homes to the dogs that are in need we can't recognize you guys enough. So first off, thank you all for doing that. Hopefully y'all can get some information from this, maybe some tips and pointers, but know that you have resources. There's so many fosters out there who are doing their best, right? They're doing their best with what they have, but I hope no one feels that is the end of the road when it comes to fostering. You have resources out here, whether it's Meredith or I or other professionals, plus the rescue too, so no one has to wait anymore. We can all collaborate and come together and present things like this, or come to your homes and help problem solve in real time if it makes sense. So again, thank you guys for letting us come out, and hope you get something valuable out of this, or at least your dogs, right? So something I wanted to start off by doing would be to, first off, raise your hand if you're a foster. I'm assuming everyone is, right? Or has been a foster before? No? Good. Is anybody looking forward to fostering for the first time? Anybody who's never fostered a dog? All right, so everyone's got experience, right? But I wanted to ask you guys, and y'all can answer out loud with this, but what do y'all think is the purpose of fostering? Like the nuts and bolts goal of fostering. What do you think your role is in this whole system? Any thoughts on that?
Learn about the personality of the dog and try to prepare them for a new home.
Perfect, right? So learn the dog, gain their trust, learn how to set them up for success, right? You keep that in your mind when you're living with these dogs, because we can't know where they came from. We can't know their whole entire history. And something that I like to do is assume everything has or hasn't been done to this dog, right? Just assume that on the front end, because you'll never know. But if you have that approach on the front end, it changes how you interact with them from the beginning, right? Because again, it takes a lot of grace, a lot of empathy, and a lot of patience when it comes to inviting a dog like that into your homes, right? And a lot of reasonable expectations. Given that we don't know where they came from, proceeding with caution is really important. But I don't want you to take that as oh no, we have to really be cautious with this dog. No, it's just understanding their point of view. And I think that that's something that really can help put both parties, being the fosters and the dogs, on the same team. Building trust is something that on the front end is so necessary, but it's really, I think, undervalued a lot. Given that these dogs have had all these different experiences, the value of positive reinforcement, the value of giving them independent time to decompress, right? The value of earning their trust, it speaks volumes for everything that the dog's going to experience, moving forward, right? Anything on expectations?
Yeah, I think in my experience, by the way, I used to be a foster coordinator for Shelby Bank, so I have a lot of experience mostly with human people and the animals that I put into their care, and being that liaison between those two beings. And I think a lot of people romanticize or idealize what it would be like. And so they sign up to foster a dog, and they think the dog
the next steps you're going to take, right? So establishing a relationship, I think, is super, super important because you guys being the fosters, like you were saying, what's your name again?
Lisa.
Lisa. So like Lisa said, learning how to set up this dog for success in the next place is such a crucial part of your role in this dog's life. You know, letting them go is super hard, but that confidence and understanding that you've done everything you can to set them up for success in the next chapter of their life that's the thing that helps me feel good about the next part of their process, right? But having those expectations be realistic is super helpful. Like Meredith said, it's going to get dirty, it's going to get weird, it's going to get annoying, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so hang in there, right? And y'all consult with each other because everyone, I'm sure, is having a similar experience or has had them before, right? And you got through it and you've helped that dog move on, so like it can be done. But nothing happens overnight, and it's super important to recognize that. You might get a smooth foster that gels really well, or you might get a dog that, I make this joke with my clients, I call certain dogs real dogs, dogs that express themselves, right? Whether that's growling, whether that's you snapping or showing teeth. These are important behaviors to observe and recognize, not to criticize or punish or suppress, right, from that dog. Because, again, thinking about it from their perspective, you guys are pulling dogs from shelters, from off the street, you know, that have been at vet cares or boarding for a long time, so their world is completely changed. You know, when you guys go on a trip and you come home, what do you want to do when you get home? Just melt, right? That's what a lot of these dogs need, is just time and space to decompress, you know? But from a development standpoint, something that I think is really helpful for all dogs to develop is confidence is a big one. Resiliency, you know, bouncing back after something might spook them or startle them. Independence is a huge one, and patience, right? Having those at the forefront of your mind can really help you help this dog or set up this dog for success too, right? But something else is when you get a foster, like Meredith was saying, there's this honeymoon phase. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy you're with me. We're gonna have the best time. Let's go to the pet store. Let's go to the dog park. Let's go to all these places, right? And I'm seeing everyone's faces to recognize, like, we gotta pump the brakes, right? We gotta learn these dogs first, you know? A lot of times we can get lucky, you know, we have those dogs that fit into every single space, right? But if you have a dog that's expressing themselves, really going at their speed is gonna be super important. So something I try to remind people is limit unpredictable variables this dog experiences early on, right? That may be kids, it may be friends and family that come over, it may be other dogs, right? Or things that you can't control, like going to Lowe's and being scared by the breeder who's just trying to be friendly, but they don't know this dog, and that dog definitely doesn't know them. You know, so proceeding with caution is really helpful. And then consulting with a professional. You know, if that's something you want to do, ask yourself, look at the dog, and ask yourself, does the dog want to do that, right? Because I know we want to show them off, but taking a brand new foster from a fight ring to that brewery park field right there on a night, yeah, it's going to be busy. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on, and it's not going to be that easy to just navigate that situation, you know? So really proceeding with caution is helpful.
I was thinking, did that actually happen? Did someone actually do that?
I'm sure.
No.
Maybe. Not me.
Sorry. I think what I want to know if I were you is like more specific. So like both of us had Theo. Does everyone know Theo? So like, oh okay.
Yeah.
So like, how did you were the first one that had it, so right? So how did you set him up in your house? Like from the moment he was dropped off or you picked him up, like what did you do and why?
So Theo, I picked up Theo from, he was boarding at the Palms and was showing a lot of aggression there, right? A lot of sensitivity, especially with handling. So my goal with Theo was to, first off, figure out a way that I don't have to necessarily put a leash on him to accomplish the goals that I need to. So I needed him to realize routine and space to decompress, you know? I love the Palms and I got friends that are managers there and great facilities, but there's a lot going on, right? There's a lot of stimulus in those environments. So taking a dog like that to a house environment is a world changer, right? So lowering expectations, no, we didn't go for a walk this day, no, we didn't go, he didn't meet my other dogs that day, we didn't go to Home Depot, you know, we just hung out together. So this is is him and I, just in the room, chilling. You know, and when it comes to housing a foster, I want everyone to look at this picture right now, okay? How many different options do you see of a place where Theo could sleep? You know, or just call him out. Where do you think Theo could sleep in this room? Right. Floor, right? The crate, the bed, right? He could sleep in a chair, but it spins, so that's not good. But the idea is he's got options, right? Options for a dog that may not have had options is a world changer. It's tremendous for their confidence boosting, right? But for him and I, it was very minimal. You know, I still didn't know Theo that well, so my first goal was to share space with him, but not pressure him into doing anything, right? I gave him a bone to lick on, just as some sort of positive reinforcement, something to focus on. Then he started to play with me, okay? Now, in a second, you're gonna see what happens with dogs like Theo, who don't have a lot of social history with humans, start to get it, right? Theo, how old is Theo? Oh, was it 2 or 3? He was young. He's young. But his brain was how old?
I thought he was under 1.
Right? So
Yeah.
like he
Yeah, he acted like a juicy teenager. He
Super.
was, hyperactive, easily aroused, not good impulse control.
So as he and I start interacting, he's like, oh my gosh, this is pretty fun.
Yeah.
Right? So now he's starting to jump, right? And then in a second he's gonna grip and rip, which is what we call humping dog training, right? But him and I we're playing, okay? So there's a lot of feedback happening with him and I. But you start to realize, okay, this dog gets aroused very quickly, right? So as we start to play, I want it to stop. He's like, no, what do you mean stop? It's not a word I've ever heard before, right? So as he starts to build, he'll start to hump. And the idea at that point is not correcting this behavior, okay? Because he's not trying to hurt me. This is not aggression. This is way overstimulation, right? What this is for me is a learning experience to recognize, okay, if I start hanging out with you, if I start wrapping him up, okay, that energy is going to go somewhere. And sometimes it's my arm or my leg. Or sometimes it could be something else, right? So having an outlet for a dog like this and recognizing how we influence a dog like that is super, super important for learning how to set this dog up for success, moving forward. And this behavior doesn't last forever, meaning it doesn't have to travel with him to the next place, but the knowledge should travel with him everywhere, right? So where when he goes to Meredith, right, I can say, hey, he's gonna get excited really easily, so if you throw him in a full play group, he might lose his mind. And he might try to hump every dog that he sees, right? And they may not like that, so the recipe might not be super great.
Can I interject?
Yes.
There's a popular metaphor in dog behavior training that is meant to help humans visualize dogs experiencing high arousal levels. When I say arousal, I don't just mean sexual stuff, right? It's just hyperactivity, right? And the metaphor is for a sink. So a sink it has a basin, it has a spigot, and it has a drain, right? Sinks have different depths and widths to them. So some sinks can hold a lot of water, some are very shallow. Some sinks have really good drainage, some don't. Some sinks have a lot of a big spigot that has good water pressure, some don't. So dogs like Theo have a very shallow basin, poor drainage, and a very, very generous spigot. So it's easy for him to turn that knob, and the velocity of that water is really, really strong. And if he is in that state of high arousal just because he's happy, and Anthony knows that he has handling issues, if Anthony were to continue to increase the rate of that water going into that basin, and it's not draining because he just came with programming that doesn't drain very easily, it's going to spill over on the sides, and even though he's in a more positive state of mind there, sometimes it can ebb over into aggression. Dogs can kind of flip that way, just like people, or you see it mostly in like little kids, they can kind of flip that way
extreme hyperarousal. Everyone's seen dogs zoom around the house, right? Try telling the dog to sit while they're zooming and see what happens, right? There's no conscious thought happening in that moment. It's pure emotional reaction, right? A lot of chemicals being flushed at that point in time, but it's the same scenario, right? When you're seeing a dog that's hyperactive or hyperarousal, it could look like zooming, it could be jumping off of us, jawing on our arms and legs, tugging on our clothes, right? They're looking for that outlet, but there is none, so their body's just reacting in that moment, right? It's important to recognize, like I said, the sensitivity in dogs like that, because how we can help them with that is something I've been trying to counsel a lot of people on recently. It's learning how to help dogs learn how to regulate their own emotions. Okay? So I'm going to show you a couple videos of, well, first off, let's start with one of the dogs from the shelter that we worked at. I know some people ask about dogs greeting each other too. So in this video, you're going to see the black dog. His name is Teddy, all right? And Miss Thelma over here, this is his Jesus.
That's sweet.
Yeah, all right? Why don't you go around Jesus? So with this, all right, there's a lot of safety precautions we put in place with two dogs that we know don't know each other, right? Or we're trying to learn them.
So Thelma is one of my dogs. This is what I would do for dogs that show me pain that have a dog aggression history, so I know Thelma. The dog we don't really know that well is Teddy.
Yeah. So yeah, Thelma's super social.
She's very.
She's a queen tester. But so with him, so we take this precaution of muzzling, long line, space with low stimuli, with low unpredictable variables, right? We're not meeting at a park or at a brewery or at an adoption event, right?
Also, Thelma is feral, so that's why we're not parallel leash walking.
Okay.
Yeah, so she doesn't walk on a leash. So, yeah.
She's the special case. Hence T-test, the Thelma test, right?
Yeah.
But so with Teddy is a lot like Theo. Teddy spent, I don't know, upwards of 3 years in a shelter to the point where he's losing weight, developing kennel psychosis, and no or minimal enrichment outlets for his whole time in there, right? So he struggled big time. So to integrate him with a group or another dog was definitely going to take some time. But things we noticed with him was, I don't think he ever calmed Thelma, but he definitely he was acting weird and fidgety and just like socially awkward, right? You see a lot of hair raised, so very aroused at this time. But Thelma reads him so well, she's like, I'm not gonna feed into that weird energy right now, but I am interested in you.
That's why she's great at this.
So, I mean, we felt comfortable with Teddy enough to bring out Meredith's other dog too.
Elsie!
But seeing how these other dogs react told us like, okay, he's got a different brain, this guy. So took time to get him to a point where we could trust that Teddy can regulate himself. Teddy also would show like Theo, where interacting with him would lead to humping me or humping his bed or something very jazzed up with minimal input from the person, right? So this was a lot for him. See tail raised, mouth open, a lot of breathing, a lot of weird jolty movements, right? Trying on Elsie.
Elsie gets
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Right? So again,
Very good.
you can notice his energy is building, right? Now this was necessary documentation to get, and we trust Elsie and we trust Teddy with us to the point where we can resolve this situation if needed.
Sorry, you can also see Elsie corrected in there and it doesn't.
Yeah.
Did you guys do that? Which is always a good sign.
Yeah. And again, you see looseness from him, but he's not committing to the looseness. It's something like he can't help himself, right?
He's kind of autistic, kind of.
Yeah.
I think it's a great way to describe him, you know? I mean, it's like in a sense, you can understand his chemistry is a little different, right? Just from his movement. So with Ted, the way that I helped him was through a lot of one-on-one interaction with the person, right? The person being me, and me being somebody that can be very aware of how I influence his arousal levels, right? The best way I've described it to clients is when you play with your dogs, and it's so important to play with them, because play being a form of arousal that we initiate, right? If you can play with them and read their energy levels and understand things building and things calming down, it can help with your awareness of how to help these dogs regulate themselves. So the best way I describe it to people is playing red light, green light with your dogs, right? If you can understand what a 10 looks like, the mounting, pumping, jawing, zooming, right? That's a 10, way past their point. Try to build them up to a 3 or 4, and then just stop, just back off, okay? This next video I'm gonna show you is me and that same dog with a little audience, okay? And the way we are playing is very much like playing body face. Everyone know what the game body face is with dogs? Raise your hand if you don't know what it is. Body face is when two dogs, you know, body face is when two dogs are doing this. But they are not trying to hurt you. Or they're jawing or they're pulling skin and doing this thing, right? They're playing with their mouths, okay? So, Teddy and I, and you can see 2 other dogs in the background. This is like probably 2 years after that video was taken at Meredith's house.
Teddy's
Teddy is snow.
all dogs that were supposed to be dog arrested.
Yeah, all rejects. Right? But so I want you to watch how I play with Teddy. Okay? There's back and forth. So I'm trying to prompt him to play right now. Who has multiple dogs here? If you have multiple dogs that like to play, you may, if you watch them from afar, you may see one come up and kind of like poke and back up, right? That type of movement is trying to initiate a response from the other dog. If they come and do that to you, maybe that's what they're doing. But so, the way we're playing, okay, I wanted to do this where you can listen to it. I don't know if anyone can hear that. Good. So, we built him up to a point. Now, me petting him, stopping the hand movement, bringing it down. When you play with dogs, or you watch 2 dogs play with each other, when the play stops, you'll see one dog, or likely both dogs, either shake it off, or sneeze, or kind of blow out air. It may be hard to hear, but in a second you'll see him shake it off. But throughout this play, this first little set, he's constantly just bringing himself back down, keeping himself in this range, so it doesn't get to that point. Right? There's the shake. Those 2 dogs did not start off as friendly as you can see on the couch, right? They never fought each other, but they were like Teddy, getting keyed up very easily, right? So to introduce them, similar concept, muzzles, leashes, safe space, supervision, okay, and intermittent times together, okay? So these little play sessions, first off, I wanted them to realize muzzles meant fun things. Muzzles meant they were gonna play, okay? Muzzles are great. They're amazing tools and they can help dogs do things like reading each other and playing more naturally versus us trying to be puppeteers with them on leashes, right? So their play is very rough, right? 2 kitties, but this was how they developed trust in each other, okay? When I noticed their play getting to a point that I felt was gonna peak, I would intervene. And the simplest way to intervene is just get their focus off of each other for a moment. When I would do that, they would start to show those calming signals, the shaking, the sneezing, okay? So after seeing that multiple times with them, I started to trust that they could regulate amongst themselves. So my trust in them was developing. This video is a little bit longer, but I'm gonna jump a little bit. But this is a clear example of regulation. Okay, some of y'all may have seen this video. Clear example of regulation, self-regulation. Okay, and they had done this hundreds of times before I filmed it ever. So this video, I guarantee that somebody else would stop these dogs probably like around this point. But you'll see towards the end how they regulate themselves. Okay. And knowing that this is how they play is an important point I should make. But watch the energy start to build. Somebody probably would have stopped it there. But watch what happens.
The girls, that's my girls.
Watch Shrimp, watch Brown.
Good job.
She's still coming down off that ledge, I said. She's working it down.
Yeah.
So seeing them do that is it's a beautiful thing to see when you know you're watching. But like that doesn't happen overnight. Like I mean they stay segregated in my house for months when they first started to live, but that's so I can learn them. Right? So if you have a foster that you would love to be friends with your dog, sometimes it can go great right off the bat, and that's a beautiful thing too. But patience and really helping them develop and learn how to regulate themselves, it takes time to do it. Anything you want to add? Readings or management?
I think what I would want to add is like, well, I'm kind of like just totally steering the conversation in the right direction then. Okay. So like, I think one of the biggest, incidences where a foster dog that has fear-based aggression, a feral dog, a dog like Theo, or McKinney, who's a great example, is how you get that dog from point A to you, which is point B. So like you pick Theo up from the Palms, or I get McKinney from here. No, he was dropped off to me. What do you do in that situation? So I think a lot of people take the dog and just put him in the house or put him in the backyard. Like we said before, that's too much. So like what I do is I bring the dog into my yard, there's no other dogs out, and I let them smell, they're dragging a leash, and then I bring them into a spot that is quiet, that's got solitude, and I try and keep them there for a while. And that's the decompression time. Everyone's heard of decompression time, right? Yeah. And I think that's really important. I try not to physically handle the dog unless they ask me to. That's my whole consent thing. And I think that is where dogs can build trust as well, by feeling like they're in control of initiating a social interaction with you instead of vice versa. So many people are the ones that initiate social interaction first. So Anthony has a bunch of setups in his house. A lot of it is X-pens with crates. Does everyone here know what an X-pen is? I know Jody knows what an X-pen is. Yeah, those are great. X-pen in a guest bedroom, in a crate, quiet room, lights out, sound machine on, chew bones, just to kind of get them to reset almost their physiology from being from a stressful shelter to now being in a house. I even don't give them baths for 2 weeks sometimes, and I know they stink really bad, but that kind of invasive handling would really kind of throw them off. And then for dogs that don't walk on a leash, has anybody ever taken a dog that doesn't even walk on a leash? Well, yeah. So like, how did you guys move them from point A to point B then?
Carry.
You carry them? Like in your arms?
Through my arms.
Okay. Something that I have done with dogs that might fear bite is I use big transport carriers for dogs, like cat carriers for dogs. Anthony and I did that a lot in the shelter. We literally would load a dog up into a carrier by like X-pins, like gradually making the space smaller and smaller, so all we had was that crate to go into. Talking about hands-free handling, right? That's what I did with Theo at my house too for a while. And we close the door, and then we pick them up, put them on a cart, and roll them out to the playfield. Like, we did that for so many dogs just so they could go outside because they were afraid of a leash. And I think that's a big tool that I use that I wish more people use when they take in dogs that have handling issues or are feral. And everyone knows what I mean by a transport carrier, right? It's like a big cat carrier for dogs, or even a wire crate.
Yeah, crate with solid walls.
Yeah. So I've done that to put dogs into their quiet space. And then I guess I'm just on fearful dogs now.
Well, what about like the value of routine?
Yeah. Well, yeah, so like for 2 weeks I try and keep everything the same. Like I want them at some point to almost be begging me, like, I want to get more stiffness. That's how they ask me for it, right? They're trying in their X-Pen, they're calling at it, they're getting really excited to see me every morning when I feed them and let them go to the bathroom. That's how I know they're probably ready for the next step. And at that point I let them out and I give them, I don't know, 30 minutes with me, like sit like kind of like he did with Theo. And I just sit there and I'm like, what are you gonna do? Like, do you want to interact with me? Do you just want to sit around the room? And sorry, Anthony's on me, I always do. So I'm the dog and Anthony is me. And the dog comes up and they're like standing next to me and then we go like this, right? That's how I know that they want me to probably interact with them. And when I do, so Anthony's the dog now, my hand is pretty still. Like I'm not immediately going, oh my gosh, right? It's pretty still. And I just gradually do it. A lot of times it's also under the chin, right? three seconds is my thing, and then I stop. Because like Theo, sometimes if you like add too much stimulus, they can explode, right? So I'll go for 3 seconds under the chin, right? 1, 2, 3, and then I'll stop. And sometimes dogs will like go away. And then sometimes they'll just look at you and be like, I want more. And so
That's the
they just
consent
go get,
test for dogs.
yeah, that's the consent test that I do. And for dogs that are more sensitive, I think of Bunny as well. Does anyone know Bunny? Yeah, okay. Bunny was another one that would kind of emotionally explode, and she wasn't the best at giving signals. Theo was better at giving signals in my opinion, but it's always an opinion. So with her, consent was a big thing. Body language is a big thing. Do you have a body language graphic? Yeah. A lot of people don't know a dog is upset until the dog is growling or snapping at them, and there's a lot of things that happen before that. Yeah. Yeah, it's fine. Like, has anyone heard of whale eyes before in dogs? Yeah. Whale eyes are, I don't know why they're called whale eyes, but it's where like you can, their eyes are like wide open, kind of like Halloween times around the corner, right? So like, we see something scary, we're like, oh my god. That's the kind of reaction that the whale eyes on a dog is, a sign of fear. Yeah. Stiffness, like what Bunny would do with me. Sorry, Anthony. So I'm Bunny, and so Bunny would come to me and be like all bloody, and then she'd just like sit in front of me, and then I'd pet her, and then she would stiffen. And I'd be like, oh, okay, she didn't know what she was asking for, so I'm just gonna stop petting her. If I were to continue to pet her in that moment, she probably would turn around and snap at me. And that got better with time because she trusted me.
That's an important point on behavior change. You know, some dogs get so excited it scares them. You know, so recognizing behavior change doesn't mean we need to freak out or anything like that, right? Just proceed with caution and patience, and let the dog choose to do things, right? Food can be really helpful for situations like that. Throwing food away can kind of give the dog another incentive to create space from you if you're ever feeling uncomfortable. But just recognizing, okay, this dog's a little sensitive in this area, okay? Proceed with caution. Again, not a scare tactic, just more awareness kind of approach.
If I can add something on
Yeah.
Bunny specifically, that if you take this thought and incorporate it,
Yeah.
this expectations, like for you of the dog, but also our adopters. I got to take Bunny to the people who drove down from Nashville to meet her, and my instructions to them were, you cannot pet her.
Yeah.
They just drove how many hours? I said, you cannot pet her, and they did it, and she's happily living with them. So however you incorporate expectations long term. That was Bunny had a success story, that it was because they were willing to literally not pet her
That's it.
when they met her. So,
Now on that point though, communicating with potential adopters or people meeting dogs is really important, because you were their translator, you're the dog's translator. But falling back on your personal experience with the dog, how you met them for the first time, how you gained their trust, that it becomes a playbook that you can utilize with future adopters too. So remembering that helps set everyone up for success, dog, too. So really good points there.
I found in my experience, like especially with shelter work, that people won't believe you.
Yeah, that's true.
Because everyone thinks their season Milan or like God's gift to earth, and they're like, oh, Buddy's gonna be fine with me, or there's some like toxic masculine figure that is like, I'm not afraid of this dog biting me. Like, well, I don't want the dog to have a fight history on the record, so I think what I try and do is send it. I try and document as much as I can. So like I'm telling you, Bunny's gonna snap at you if you pet her. Here's a video of her doing it. Or there's 7 people who have said every time I've gone initially greet her, she snapped at me. Like, believe me, like sober up, get all that like romanticized, idealistic vision of your childhood dog that looks exactly like Bunny out of your brain, and understand. And she's right. That's a very difficult thing to do. Or like dogs like Teddy. Don't throw him in the backyard with your new dog. If your dog the first day, take your time. That's really hard. And to be honest with you, I don't know the best way to do it other than to just be bluntly honest after the initial like sales pitch of them, and including as much information as possible.
Yeah, I think knowing who you're talking to is really important. Like everyone here is a pretty social person, so you can kind of get a feel. There's a certain type of person in dog world that Meredith's heard me refer to this often. People as cowboys. Okay? Think of cowboys, right? We've met a lot of cowboys. Cowboys would do things at the risk of nothing. They would just do it, right? So if you feel like you're talking to a cowboy, you're trying to introduce them to a hypersensitive dog, there's obviously ways to put it as blunt as you need to, but if you don't feel that they're gonna kind of follow those guidelines, set it up differently. Have them meet across with a fence in between them, or say, hey, maybe we'll reschedule a different time, whoever's sick or whatever. But don't put that dog in that position if you feel it's a risk for them or for the human too. So knowing who you're talking to is important, but that's where counseling comes into play. And it's hard when you're in this kind of field. We deal with it regularly with people who have had dogs their whole life, right? And who say, every dog loves me. I just have to blame. I just need to put my hand out. But the truth is they haven't met every dog and they haven't met this individual dog. So if you get a weird feeling about an adopter or a situation, express it to who you feel needs to hear that. Because that's really fostering. Y'all are such a vital part in that chain of their life that if you don't express it, then no one else may. Right? So put it out there. Even if that means the dog doesn't get adopted, that's okay. We'd rather to have that information than for the dog to be adopted and come back or be adopted and bite someone. That's definitely not a good situation.
I have a question about like if you're fostering and training, like at what point would you guys recommend starting working with the dog to train them? Like
So-
at what point, like when they decompress, what signals are you looking for?
You may have to think. My opinion is this. From a fostering standpoint, do not focus on training the dog. Not until you consult with a trainer, because there are so many different approaches to having a dog walk on a leash or go in a crate or not jump on someone, there are certain behaviors I think are important, like walking on a leash, not jumping or tackling a person, but from a fostering standpoint, learn the dog first. If there are behaviors that you're like, all right, they need to work on X, Y, and Z, write that, document that. But I would highly recommend consulting with somebody else before we start going down that path. Because I can't tell you how many foster homes I've gone into where I walk into a situation and I realize I have to do damage control for all the things that have been done to this dog just in that home. And it's not criticism to any person because everyone's trying their best, right? But when dogs start getting mixed signals, it gets really weird, because then they're like, okay, I don't even know if we've been doing this and that. So like from a training standpoint, there's no direct answer to say even try it at this point in time, but when it comes to fixing behavior, if that's how we look at training,
Well, I'm talking about basics, like to feed a dog, like I always make my dogs like sit, like basic, basic
best way to help a dog develop patience is understand what they want and what gets them what they want. So like for example, if you're about to let them out the back door of your house to go to the backyard, and they're jumping at the door, she's like, yeah, let's go, or they're jumping on you, or they're jumping in general, and that door opens, that becomes the way to go outside, right? Where you don't have to do anything. You could just stand there, right? You can check your phone, you can, whatever. But then the dog sits on their own or doesn't jump. Now you open the door. Now you are training that behavior, right? So like the way I look at training is not to teach a dog to do a thing. It's learning how to set the dog up for success so they can choose how to make things happen. Again, it harps back on freedom of choice. When you're giving these dogs, you're empowering them to figure things out. And when they do figure it out, they figure out, oh, if I sit at this door, it opens without even telling them, never making them, but without even asking them to. It sinks in so much better because they figured it out. And that could be for any behavior that it's something they want. To go in the crate, to come out the crate, to get the food, to get out the car, to go for a walk, whatever it might be. As long as you understand what they want and how they get that thing, you can observe impulsivity or you can observe patience. And it's typically one or the other. And then it becomes just a matter of what you want to support or not. Never correcting or criticizing or demeaning or punishing. It's more supporting, providing access to things that are easy to do that. Right? I hope that answers your question.
My response is, I don't worry about obedience training until I feel a dog is emotionally stable. So, like, the dog that you're describing is probably already emotionally stable. But, the first day that I did a board and train for McKinney, and I was like, this dog doesn't trust me. I don't trust him. The first 3 days of this is going to be just us developing a relationship with each other to where he's just comfortable with me putting a leash on him and loading him up in the car. Even if McKinney wasn't the kind of dog that was like me, if I violated that, I would still respect him for that, right? I think that some dogs come in, probably like the dog you're describing, that's raring to go, really happy-go-lucky.
And that's not a specific dog. That's
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you think of the cliche golden retriever, right? That's 1.5 years old, very active, very overly friendly. Yeah, scatterbrained. I think that doing basic training can be a form of enrichment too for them. I think it's a good way to have you practice how you communicate with them and how they receive that communication. Some dogs aren't going to follow the YouTube video that you look up necessarily, right? Like if you look up Zach George's Dog Training Revolution, teaching a dog to sit, and he uses food, and your dog can care less about food. What do you do? So I think that's a way for you to figure out the dog in a deeper level, which I think is valuable. Because if you have a crackhead dog, you put him into an adopted home, they're going to be like, this is a crackhead. What do you do to help tame this beast? And then at that point you can say, well, this is what I did during feeding time. Or before I let him out the door. I waited for him to offer to sit for me. Or we worked on a mat settle behavior. A lot of my clients have dogs that are scared and oddly of people, and they're reactive, so they're barky, or they jump up on a person and bark at their face. And the person wants me to teach them how to have calmer greetings, like sit for being pet. And I was like, your dog doesn't want to be pet. Let's work on that first before we work on sitting for pet. Does that make sense? Yeah. But for dogs that are normal coming in, I would say, if you wanted to start on training after that initial 2-week period of just settling into a new normal, you can start to add that. I don't think that's a problem.
Well, I'll be honest, to me, that's not really realistic. If you're a working person, I can't have a wild animal in my house for 2 weeks, because this is a volunteer organization. So.
Right. Well, I think there's management and there's training. So, if a dog came out, a hyperactive dog came out of a puppy mill situation, right?
Yeah.
And he was in a cage for his whole life, I want to let him have a vacation before I have him act straight, button up and act right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I get what you're saying there.
There's an integration mindset, that I think is so helpful. If you think about, folks who are incarcerated for a long period of time, right? Adjusting to society is a culture shock, right? Now, imagine if you could not understand anything that's happening in your world, right? You don't have any control over it. That's what these dogs experience. You know, I remind folks, you know, dogs' senses, sight, smell, touch, taste, and it's all very heightened, right? But they don't have what we have, which is the ability to understand their environment. So helping them understand their environment is so necessary for them to let that guard down. So then you can start to see that. So I mean, training, just that term can be tossed around in so many different directions, but as long as you're building a relationship with this dog, you are inherently learning them. And if you encounter dogs like that, with the hyperactive behavior or tough to manage behavior, then reach out. You know, I mean, that's like, because a simple meeting can really kickstart that in the right direction. That is reasonable to that person. You know, something we both pride ourselves on is learning the people that we're dealing with, the clients and the dog, and then seeing the space and saying, okay, where's the middle ground that they can, you know, live a functional life. And if that's not the case, then we say, hey, what other fosters do you have? Can we potentially, you know, try something else out, right?
Usually that overlap involves management and training. So like people that are like stay-at-home dog moms that don't have anything else to do, like it's more training and less management usually. But people that have an 8 to 5 and like 3 kids, it's usually heavier management and then training when you can. That's my best answer.
Something I want to make sure you guys are aware of. Have y'all ever heard the term fear-free in regards to dogs or shelters or vet care or foster care? Okay. Fear-free is an amazing concept. We both are, you know, huge advocates of it. You know, she mentioned the hands-free handling that we did. You know, there are ways to approach common pet issues without force or without ever having to make them do anything. And Fear-free is going to be that way. So Fear-free Happy Homes is a great resource for you guys. It's just a website you can go to. And they have a lot of videos and a lot of documents pertaining to like common issues, like how to do walks, preventing anxiety, training social living. Very minimal stuff. It's not like the nitty gritty how to deal with a dog situation. But from a standpoint of a foster, it can really be helpful to utilize resources like this, so there are things that you can recognize and understand and then adjust accordingly, right? And like I said, if it is something that has got you stumped or you're not comfortable with it, expressing that to the right parties is so beneficial for everybody involved. So I'm going to make sure Jennifer has that website for you, as well as any other documentation you need from us. But I guess with that, unless there's anything specific you want to address, any questions? Yeah. All right. Anyone? Yes.
Meredith said that you had several spaces in your home for dogs, you know, to detox. Is there a time when you foster a dog and you interact with that dog completely, and then it goes back to its safe place, and then you interact with your own dog? Like if your own dog won't accept, you can totally keep them separate?
Yeah, what do I call that? I call that speed dating.
Oh, yeah.
So like, you know, if I'm watching a movie, I might watch, you know, first half with Zoe and then we'll watch the last half with Crush, you know, or rotate around. I'm lucky that I have, you know, I live by myself, I'm only human, but I have extra rooms, and then I've created other spaces for dogs. So it didn't happen overnight. It gradually got to that point, but also, you know, independence is a character trait I think we undervalue with dogs. You know, we like to spend every minute we can with it, which nothing inherently wrong with that. But then there becomes a dependency. Sometimes, I should say sometimes. But having the value of independence, you know, something with Theo, I'll show you this video too. It's actually the same one we just kind of covered. But with Theo, you know, having time where he's by himself showed me that he can be comfortable by himself. So at this point, afterwards, I'm not in the room anymore, so I'm watching them through a camera. Cameras are awesome, they don't have to be expensive, but they can really validate that dogs can calm themselves down in the room. Now, is he passing out on the bed immediately? No. He's feeling it out, he's searching the room. But eventually he does get to the point where he gets on that bed and I watch him go, that everyone's seen that deep breath before. So like that being a clear sign of, okay, he's getting to that point is so important. So
Can you talk about some of the behaviors that dogs might do when they're separated? Like, do you ever get dogs that bark or like claw on the door or like make separation more difficult?
yes, yeah. So I mean, all those behaviors she mentioned, clawing at the door, digging at the ground, howling, barking. I mean, destructive I wouldn't necessarily say is a stressor. Sometimes it can be a lack of enrichment where they're finding something to be interacted with, but that's where patience becomes really helpful. And another tip that I try to give clients with helping dogs develop independence is feeding time. So feeding, typically we feed dogs twice a day. Feeding could be something that we can do with our dogs twice a day that doesn't require our presence. We can feed out of different things that may take time to eat. So for example, this is just a feeder ball. Hard plastic ball, a couple holes in it, no rocket science here. But time consumption takes time to do. It's independent from us. They're eating their meals, positive experience, right? This could be done in a crate, it could be done out in the yard, it could be done in the room, right? So you have options as far as management goes. But I like to use feeding as an opportunity twice a day for an independent activity. Busy work is another concept I like to use. The video of Theo, you might have noticed him licking something that was on the bed. I had a frozen cone waiting for him there that he just had to find, right? But anything that you can utilize that's positive, that takes engagement from the dog, that you could routinely give them. You know, every time that I leave the dog that I put back in the room, something's going in with it. So it's not you left me, it's you left me, but that thing's waiting on me, right? It could be a meal, it could be a form of busy work, right? So those steps in that direction can really help develop independence. But if you're dealing with a dog that is hurting themselves in the crate or is screaming until their voice goes hoarse, like you gotta reach out to somebody. You know, let us help you with that, because that's more on the abnormal scale, but it's not something that you should have to endure every day until the dog gets adopted. You know, we can problem solve in real time, but that's where the nuance of the specific case really takes over.
Yeah, incessant barking, I'm so triggered by it. I hate it. I can't sleep. It drives me insane. It stresses me out, makes me irritable. So I sympathize with people, but at the same time, I wish more people would foster dogs and keep them separated in the house from the other dogs. So I think a lot more dogs could get placed that way. But I know it's hard. It was so hard for me, and I had so many that I could build a whole building in my backyard just to put all of them. I know not everyone can do that, but yeah, I think routine is really important too. They can hopefully after 2 weeks they can fall into an expectation. Like with my kennel building, when the lights go out, like we'll stop barking and go to sleep, because that's every time that's what happens. So yeah, that was a really good question, Sandy. I would think that I think a lot of fosters feel guilt for their personal dogs and for the foster dog. I went through that so much, where I was like, I feel bad for this foster dog because I have to keep it separate because one of my other dogs doesn't get along with it, but I also don't want to not have time with my personal dog. And I was like, at the end of the day, I'm gonna give preference to my personal dog, right? My foster dog is temporary, my personal dogs are permanent. So I'm okay with keeping them separated in a separate room. That's how I kind of dealt with my mom guilt for sure. Has anyone felt that before? Yeah. So I give a lot of preference to my personal dogs because I know the foster is more temporary. Question.
It's really good too, you can make them room dividers.
So like if you have several X-Pens in your house, you can have one in every room that you spend the most time in, like your kitchen, your living room, and your bedroom, and just have a physical barrier so the foster can still see you, but also keep that physical separation. That doesn't always work.
Yeah, I mean, y'all all know this. There's a giant learning curve to fostering this dog, whatever dog that is, right? It's going to be different from the last dog, and different from the next dog. So, we can use your knowledge that you've acquired over time after fostering these dogs to help set up this one for success. But there's always a learning curve. Every time a new dog comes stay with me the first night, it's always the roughest.
Yeah.
If I get a singer or a talk
You almost like want them to start to be like, I identify you as the primary caregiver and the allocator of my resources that I want. And through that, a bond can be developed and they start to seek you out. Normally, they're only going to bond to one primary caregiver. So if that's you, the bond to the children or the husband or the other person in the home can normally be a little bit more cumbersome and difficult for the dog to generalize. Does that make sense?
Yeah, she's doing really well with the other dog.
Yeah.
We have a small home, so we can't really separate stuff out when I work from home. And I actually noticed yesterday she started, like, the older dog will tattle on her, so when she's walking into my office,
Yeah.
it's her barking. But all of a sudden, she started nosing me in the chair, asking me to pet. And then she's timid,
Yeah.
but then she's like wanting to be pet.
Yeah. You might try that consent test then, where you're not like, if this is her head, you're not actively scratching, it's more just like she's nose bumping you and your hand is just still there. And you start to see how much more intense she's gonna get about attention-seeking behavior from you.
She's getting there quickly.
Okay, that kind of ties into what the other woman that was sitting there asked, like, what are you, there you are. If that dog that you described jumped up on me one day, I would be like, that's awesome. I don't care that you're not sitting, just the fact that you want me right now is awesome.
I was trying to teach her to sit there, but she didn't even understand what.
No, yeah.
So, like, here, I'm treating.
Yeah.
And for those types of dogs, like expectations for
Training is just about how can I have you trust me? Like that's the training here. And it's very abstract. It's not as straightforward as teaching a dog to mat settle or sit down. It's more at that dog's pace, right?
Okay, so it's not like, we're not gonna never get her to walk on the leash.
You could, or some dogs get there, some dogs don't. There's some people around here that are putting dogs like that on leashes and collars and just letting them flail around until they submit to it, and I think that is bad. I don't think that, like, why does,
I mean, yeah, I get a dog that walks on a leash can, like, have more opportunities in life, but,
it can also just be happening in the backyard in the house with a puppy door too, you know what I mean? So, it's more like, I might be getting off topic here, but when I talk to clients like this, like, when that kind of dog that comes straight out of the puppy mill that's been literally raised under a rock, sees a new person, it's like us looking at a scary monster, right? Like a hooded figure in our driveway at 9:30 at night. What the hell are you doing here? I'm terrified. What would you need that being to do to make you feel more comfortable in that situation? And that's what that type of dog needs from you. Does that kind of help shift the perspective a little bit?
I think it helps confirm what I'm trying to do with her.
Okay, good. I'm glad.
Because I was worried that, like, I wasn't, like, I'm not training. She's one of the younger ones, I think. She's
Yes.
only, like, 19 months, so she didn't go through it very, very long.
Yes.
She knows. But she's, like, it's really funny because she'll jump she doesn't want to go out the door, but when she's out the door, she loves being outside.
Yeah.
And then she'll jump from inside, and so then it's like, I'll literally, like, pick her up and walk her 2 steps and put her down.
Yeah.
And then she's happy as can be. She's like, we've done this. We've done this. But she's, okay.
Well, that,
I don't know. We're in the process of actually adopting her.
Oh,
It's
nice.
Lacey.
Nice.
Lacey, she's one of the very cross with me.
Does she?
I think she came in with April, is all I know.
Does she follow her other dog around?
My older dog is 13 and a half. He's also from about the but his legs don't.
Oh, okay.
So he tattles on her everywhere she
regulation, like supervision.
Yeah.
Okay. Like you're not reviewing very frequently. Okay, perfect.
I think you're doing the right thing. It sounds like she's gonna start to have a good relationship with your whole family then. If your mother-in-law comes over there, she's probably gonna still be kind of a little intimidated of her. Yeah. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah.
I have one. So we had a foster that we ended up adopting, and thank you. And when we first got him, he was great on the leash. He was not reactive towards people, cars, other animals, like when we took him out on walks. But we have noticed in the last week and a half, he has become more reactive when we have him out. And he'll see someone bark, the dogs is barking, and it's not a friendly bark, but it's not like majorly aggressive bark. What do you think might be making that change?
So, first question I typically ask people who have that issue is, does he ever bark at things from the house, like out a window, to
Yes.
the garbage truck, or walkers that go by? Yeah.
Yes.
Does anyone else have this issue? Dogs barking at things that pass by in front of your house or approach the door, things like that? Yeah. So, me too.
We get pretty dogs.
So it's super common, and you often see it start there and then translate sometimes from the car windows, sometimes from fences, sometimes on walks too. Now there could be a lot of reasons as to why, so I'm not going to say this exactly, but I'm glad you brought it up because it's important, because that behavior pattern, reacting to things that go by your house, is super common, and when you break it down, you start to see what is this pattern. The pattern is things approach the house, dogs go nuts, the thing keeps going by and then it's gone, right? The mail truck, garbage truck, walkers. So then you say, okay, why is the dog doing this behavior? Right? Dogs don't do things for no reason. There's always reasons, right? Even if they're barking at nothing, there's something, right? So, or they think there's maybe something. But the pattern is things approach, they bark, they feel they're making it go away because it works. And then repeats itself, right? This is epiphany. I had the same exact reaction when I was thinking about it. Because how long do they practice this? Could be all day long, right? For some dogs, a lot of dogs, this is their primary activity in the house, is to wait for things to show up, to then shoo it away. It's just like the rooster crowing to make the sun come up. It has no influence, but try telling them that. It works. So something to try, and I always rate this as an experiment, is to apply window film over their line of sight. And it does not have to be blackout window film. I don't think I have pictures in here.
They make cute window film now.
Yeah, lots of stuff. So light can still come through, right? Now they can still see a figure if it's right in front of them at the door, right? But you're dulling one of their senses to hopefully prevent the practicing of this behavior. So that's like step one, is prevent them from practicing it regularly. Because if you're gone all day and they're at that window all day, it could be 100 times they practice it, it works. And then on walks, sometimes it translates as to something I'm uncomfortable with, stay away, get away. And that works too. They stay safe, So when it comes to reactivity, we try to teach the dogs a new way of interacting with that thing, right? The simple answer is calm observation, right? But a lot of times easier said than done. So there are a lot of factors like what is the thing doing? Is it reacting? Is it coming? Is it going? Is it a dog? Is it a person? Is it a kid? A lot of factors with that. But the short answer, I would say, is to try to reward the moment they observe that thing. But I even struggle saying that because there's just so many factors involved in that. But I'd love to help you with that too.
My first question would be, how long has he been doing it? Did it start the moment you got him, or did it get gradually start to happen?
Well, no, he was walking fine, and so it was not, we live in a quiet neighborhood, but we do live in a neighborhood.
Yeah.
So he was seeing other people in their yards.
Yeah.
A neighbor has like 2 ducks that were really wrong. He would see them and be interested in
and then they get them home, and then like 2 weeks later, they're barking at everything, because now they feel comfortable enough to express themselves, which is a blessing and a curse. At least he's telling you that ducks excite him and he wants to go get them. Or, you know, he's telling you that guys wearing baseball hats that are 20 feet away from me are scaring me, right? I think too, sometimes dogs are just naturally noble, which I think golden retrievers can be. There's like some people naturally talk more than others. It can run true with dogs too. Reactivity is something that I love working with. It's not as simple or as straightforward as teaching basic obedience. It's like taking a therapy session for your dog. Joni can tell you a lot about that. Susie can tell you a lot about that. Distance thresholds are important. So, you know, when you're out in your neighborhood and there's a person that you would react to or a dog, do you have control over how far away you are from it? Normally you don't, because you can't walk up into a neighbor's backyard and have a car. Like, that's weird, right? So, just like Anthony was saying about the window film and prevention, you know, the best thing to do when you're going through a training program is trying to just prevent putting him in environments that cause that behavior, which I know is difficult to do. So you just try the best you can, really. But yeah, I just think some dogs are just naturally more prone to be vocal about things, and they're reacting because they're either fearful or frustrated that they can't access it. So yeah, and you might want to look at body language charts to kind of gauge whether or not it's frustration or fear. Yeah, but we can help with that. You know, it's like a whole other conversation. Sure. Very common issue.